Chapter 7 Highway to Hell. The convoy rolled out of Camp Eagle at dawn, the sky still bruised with the last remnants of night. Frost clung to the earth, and the air carried a sharp bite, cutting through the exhaust fumes curling from the Humvees as they rumbled forward. The M1025 Humvee rattled over the rough road, its heavy tires kicking up slush and mud as the convoy pressed deeper into Bosnia's winter-stricken countryside. Shane sat in the back seat, shoulders stiff, his rifle wedged between his legs. A chill seeped through the metal floor of the vehicle, but nobody seemed to notice. It had taken only a few days, and they were all used to it, just another layer of discomfort on top of everything else. The glass beside his face was cold. They formed a staggered column winding through Bosnia's scarred countryside. The road, a patchwork of cracked blacktop, frozen mud, and packed down snow, snaked through valleys where the land still bore the wounds of war. Charred skeletons of buildings stood like silent sentinels. Their windows were hollowed out, their walls riddled with bullet scars. Some had collapsed entirely, nothing but piles of rubble, while others bore the signs of hasty repairs. Plastic sheets where roofs had caved in, tarps stretched over shattered walls. Lauren sat beside him, crammed in with Wilson opposite him, who was massaging his temples, nodding along to something Rodriguez was saying up front. The vehicle hummed with the murmurs of soldiers, a mix of bullshit, half-truths, and real talk meant to pass the time. "All right, listen up," Staff Sergeant Laughlin called out from the front passenger seat, his voice sharp but not unkind. "We're about an hour out from Kiseljak. Since I doubt most of you took the time to read any of the briefings, I'm going to give you the basics now so you don't go making an ass of yourselves first thing." "Aw, come on, Sarge, we'd never do that," Lauren said, barely keeping a straight face. Laughlin didn't even turn around. "Taylor, if anyone's going to step on their dick today, it's you." That got a few laughs, but the sergeant pressed on. "All right, Kiseljak's a small town, couple thousand people. You'll see a mix of folks trying to get back to normal and those who still got a grudge to settle. Most of them will just go about their day and keep their heads down. You'll get some who'll test you, nothing crazy, just seeing what they can get away with. And then you got the ones who'll smile at you one day and put a bullet in your back the next." That sobered the mood quickly. Shane shifted in his seat, fingers tightening slightly around his rifle. "Best way to keep shit from getting out of hand is respect," Laughlin continued. "That means don't go barking orders at people like you own the place. These folks been through hell, lost homes, lost family. Last thing they need is some 20-year-old from Texas treating them like second-class citizens in their own country." Lauren nudged Shane. "Hear that, buddy? Be polite when you're intimidating the locals." He smirked and leaned back. Shane barely reacted, just let out a quiet breath. Was it the cold? Was it the dizzying sight of what lay beyond the vehicle? He wasn't sure. But whatever it was, it had his eyes on the miles behind them and his mind further away. Amid the ruins, there were signs of life clawing its way back. A man was out chopping wood beside a half-rebuilt home, his breath misting in the cold morning air. A woman in a headscarf swept the steps of a war-torn building that might have once been a shop. Clotheslines were strung between blackened buildings, colorful garments fluttering like defiant banners. They passed through a small village where children played near a bombed-out husk of a bus, kicking around a half-deflated ball. Their laughter was thin given the thick glass, but those expressions were real. An old man stood at the roadside watching the convoy roll past with wary eyes, his hands tucked deep into the folds of his coat. Laughlin kept going. "Biggest thing to watch for? The kids. They'll come up to you, beg for candy, cigarettes, whatever. Some of them are just kids. Some are working for someone who's got bad intentions. If a kid runs up and drops something at your feet, you don't pick it up, you don't kick it. You move your ass. Fast." That has caught Shane's attention. He blinked, slowly turning his head briefly towards the front. He pursed his lips, nodded, and turned back to the window. Rodriguez let out a low whistle. Jesus, they really got kids doing that shit? Wilson, who had a couple years in the army over most of them, nodded. Happened in Somalia. Kid runs up, all innocent, drops a can, boom, and I don't mean the fun kind. Lauren scoffed. The fun kind? What the hell kind of parties you go to, man? Wilson grinned. The kind that end with MPs dragging me back to base. A chuckle rippled through the vehicle, but it was short-lived. Shane wasn't the type to run his mouth like Lauren, but he was absorbing everything. The part about the kids stuck with him. The thought of a kid running up to them with a bomb didn't feel real. But then again, neither did being here in the first place. Point is, Laughlin continued, you don't let your guard down, not for anyone, not for the old guy selling apples, not for the kid with the big eyes, not for the pretty girl giving you the once-over. Wait, hold up, Lauren interjected. Are we talking regular pretty, or I just walked through a war zone and she still looks good pretty? Don't matter, 'cause you'll keep your dick in your damn pants, boy, Laughlin snapped. Shane let his gaze drift, watching Bosnia's shifting face through the tinted window. The conversation became white noise once more. Two women walking close to the ruins of what had once been a building, maybe a home, maybe a shop. One was pale, with dark hair pulled into a low knot beneath a wool scarf. The other had tan skin and dark eyes and carried a child wrapped in a heavy blanket. Maybe she was his age, maybe she was older, wrapped in a thick shawl that concealed almost every inch of her aside her face. Their clothes matched the same faded, oversized coats, likely given out by some relief organization. As the Humvee trundled past, the women hesitated. Then quietly, they shifted onto the same muddy shoulder where the convoy had already passed. They trusted the tracks left by military vehicles. If the soldiers had driven over it without an explosion, then it was safe enough to walk. It was a grim kind of logic, the kind you learned in a place where one wrong step could kill you. Then, the dusky one looked at him. Well, probably, at the glass mostly, but perhaps she had caught a glimpse of him through the tinted glass. There was no fear in those dark eyes, no gratitude either. Curiosity? Maybe, but observation at most. She tilted her head slightly, studying the vehicle as if trying to see through the glass, past the faceless figure seated the closest to it inside. But distance swallowed the moment, and soon, she and her companion faded into the scenery. Two ghosts navigating a landscape still haunted by war. The Humvee hit a deep pothole, jolting everyone in their seats. Shit, Sarge, Rodriguez muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. These roads are worse than the ones back home. Laughlin snorted. Yeah, but here the potholes might kill you. Lauren made an exaggerated show of glancing around. Hey, quick question. How the hell did we end up on the scenic route to hell? I thought Bosnia was supposed to be pretty. It is, Wilson said, peering out the window at the snow-covered hills in the distance. If you ignore the part where half of it got blown to shit. They drove in silence for a bit, the reality of their situation settling in. Outside, Bosnia rolled by, ruined villages, people bundled up against the cold, the occasional makeshift repair job that spoke of resilience more than recovery. Shane found himself thinking about the woman he'd seen earlier, the way she'd tilted her head, watching them go. Something about it stuck with him, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because she hadn't looked scared. She'd just watched. All right, Laughlin said, breaking the quiet. One last thing. You got a lot of ideas about what a bad guy looks like. Might think you can spot him easy. Well, I got news for you. No, the fuck you can't. He sighed, leaning back. We've established kids being involved in this, ladies and old folks, but it doesn't stop there. If you meet another American soldier or even a NATO boy, but you can't remember seeing him at camp or something, then don't be stupid and trust him. Ask for proof. Sarge's name, CO, assigned to the mission's name. CO's rank, anything that all of you dipshits would know. And if he doesn't? One of them asked, furrowing his brows. Then he ain't one of you now, is he? Shane saw Wilson nod slowly. Rodriguez glanced at the side mirror but said nothing. You're gonna meet people who look like your neighbors back home, Laughlin went on. People who sound like 'em too, but that don't mean shit. You stay sharp, you stay professional, and you don't assume a damn thing. Silence settled in again, this time heavier. The convoy had been on the move for nearly 40 minutes, weaving through a countryside that told its own war story. Shane's rifle now rested against his thigh. However, his eyes never stopped scanning the passing terrain through the reinforced window. It had been the same in the beginning, gray sky, bare trees, and snow-covered fields broken up by the occasional farmhouse. But as they traveled deeper, closer to Kiseljak, the landscape shifted. The scars of war became more pronounced. Entire villages stood abandoned, their homes roofless and gutted, skeletal remains of what had once been lives. Some had been burned out completely, only charred beams and crumbling walls left to mark where families had once lived. He could tell when they were moving through different areas, not by signs, but by the way things changed. In one stretch, Croatian flags hung from damaged homes, red and white checkers stark against the gray. Further on, the flags were blue and yellow, Bosnia's new national emblem, though many looked like they had been torn down and hastily put back up. The Serbian areas had their own markings, graffiti in Cyrillic, slogans on walls that he couldn't read but that someone like Laughlin probably could. They passed a town where the minaret of a mosque still stood, though the building beneath it had been blown to hell. It had collapsed in on itself, a heap of stone and splintered wood, but the spire remained, stubborn against the sky. In another village, a church had been reduced to rubble, the cross that once sat atop it now lying twisted in the dirt. This place wasn't Bosnia, not really. It was pieces of Bosnia, hacked apart, still bleeding, still raw. Shane glanced toward the front seat. Laughlin was talking to Wilson, his voice half drowned by the roar of the Humvee's engine. Lauren beside him was already getting restless. He kept shifting his legs, stretching them out, then pulling them back, his knee bouncing. Jesus, how much longer we got? Lauren muttered. Not long, Laughlin replied, not looking back. Stop bitchin'. Lauren huffed. I ain't bitchin'. I'm just saying, if I wanted to spend my morning getting my nuts frozen off in the back of a goddamn Humvee, I'd have signed up for a different kind of deployment. Rodriguez chuckled. What, like Hawaii? Lauren shot him a look. I was thinking more like Germany, but yeah, Hawaii don't sound bad either. Wilson shook his head. You ain't built for Germany, Taylor. Too many rules. You'd end up arrested or married. Lauren grinned. Shit, long as she's got a nice rack, I ain't opposed. Laughlin snorted. You think some German girl's gonna put up with your dumb ass? I don't know, Sarge. They say opposites attract. Shane shook his head slightly, but he wasn't really listening. Up ahead there were signs of life. A small market, or what passed for one out here. A handful of stalls were set up along the roadside, mostly selling whatever people could scrounge together. Firewood, sacks of grain, some canned goods with labels in languages Shane couldn't read. The people here were bundled up, moving carefully across the icy ground, but he could tell they weren't just locals. Some were displaced, faces thin, clothes mismatched and worn. Refugees, probably. People who had lost their homes in places too dangerous to return to. Y'all ever think about what happens after this? Wilson asked suddenly. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. After what? This, the mission, Bosnia. What happens when we pull out? Laughlin grunted. We don't worry about that. Ain't our job. Yeah, but Wilson hesitated. I mean, we come in, we keep the peace, but what's stopping them from going right back to killing each other when we're gone? Nothing, Laughlin said bluntly. Maybe a year, maybe 5. Maybe they hold out longer. But mark my fucking words, the first time some politician back home decides this shit ain't worth the money, we're out of here, and this place burns all over again. Then Lauren clapped his hands together. Well, this has been a damn uplifting chat, but can we please talk about something that doesn't involve landmines, kids with bombs, or me keeping my hands to myself? Rodriguez smirked. Like what, Taylor? You want to talk about your feelings? Hell no, I want to talk about your old lady. Rodriguez groaned. Jesus Christ, here we go. Why did I even tell you about her? Nah, I'm serious, Lauren said, smirking. Boy's got himself a girl back home, writes him letters and everything, probably spritzes him with perfume too. I bet he sniffs him before bed like some lovesick bitch. Laughlin exhaled through his nose. Taylor, I swear to God. What? It's sweet, Lauren said, grinning like an asshole. Ain't it, Rodriguez? You still keeping her picture in your helmet, or did you upgrade to jerking it to Sears catalogs like the rest of us? Rodriguez shot him a look. Taylor, I hope you get shot in the ass. That ain't a no. Wilson snorted. Maybe she already dumped his ass and he just ain't telling us. Rodriguez flipped them both off. Y'all are fucking children. Lauren leaned in toward Shane, stage whispering. He still didn't say no, though. Shane let out a breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh, but close. Lauren caught it and nudged him. There it is. Lauren clapped his hands. Look at that, boys. We got ourselves a goddamn miracle. Alexander cracked a smile. The tension in the Humvee lightened, if only slightly. The convoy pressed on, the cold seeping in, the road stretching ahead. They were still at least an hour from Kiseljak, an hour from their first real mission. He kept his eyes forward, watching as Kiseljak came into view. The town sat in the valley, the river cutting through its center. There were buildings intact, shops and makeshift stalls. People moving, trying to live like things were normal. But even from here, he could see the places where war had left its mark. Bullet holes in walls, windows covered with plastic sheeting instead of glass, shops rebuilt on foundations that had once been rubble. Some turned to watch the Humvees pass, eyes unreadable. Others ignored them entirely, too used to foreign troops rolling through their streets to care anymore. And Shane couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching. Maybe it was just his nerves, or maybe it was something else. He noted the checkpoint ahead. 3 NATO vehicles positioned across the road, a handful of soldiers standing guard, weapons at low ready but not relaxed. A few sandbags were stacked near a small concrete barrier, not nearly enough to stop anything serious, but a deterrent nonetheless. Their Humvee slowed, then stopped as Laughlin leaned out the window, signaling to one of the NATO troops. The man, a British soldier by the look of his gear, stepped forward, rifle slung across his chest. Americans? The Brit called out. Yeah, Laughlin replied. 1st Platoon, Bravo Company, out of Tuzla. You, the welcoming committee. Something like that, the Brit said, stepping aside to let them through. Pull up past the barrier. Captain's expecting you. The convoy rolled forward, stopping near a cluster of buildings that had been converted into a temporary operations center. As they dismounted, Shane took in his surroundings. The faded shop signs, the narrow streets, the burned-out husks of buildings further down the road. The air smelled like damp earth, burning wood, and exhaust. A few other NATO troops stood nearby, a mix of Brits, Germans, and a couple of Canadians. Their gear was slightly different. Some wore winter camo, others had different loadouts, but they all carried the same weight in their eyes. A captain in a NATO marked jacket approached, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Staff Sergeant Laughlin?" he asked. "That's me," Laughlin said, squaring his shoulders. "Captain Davis, Royal Infantry. You'll be relieving us on the southern checkpoint and market patrols. Town's mostly quiet, but don't let that fool you. There's been some trouble near the eastern bridge. Small arms fire last week, no casualties, but enough to keep us on edge. Locals aren't hostile, but they ain't exactly friendly either." Laughlin nodded. "Copy that. What are we looking at for security measures?" Davis gestured toward a rough map taped to the wall of the nearest building. 3 main checkpoints, one at the south end of town near the market, one at the bridge, and one up near the municipal building. We've got a small detachment stationed here at the ops center, but it's mostly just for logistics. Your guys will be handling foot patrols near the market. Keep an eye on the stalls and watch for anything out of place. The checkpoint teams will be checking vehicles coming in and out. You get a bad feeling about something, you stop it before it gets into town. Laughlin turned to his men. "You hear that? No fuck-ups. No lazy eyes. You see something off, you call it in. You stop a vehicle. You check it right." "What's the protocol for vehicle checks?" one of the soldiers asked, already running through what he'd learned in training. Davis glanced at Laughlin, who gave a nod. "All right, boys," Laughlin said, turning fully to one of his own. His eyes landed on Shane. "You, walk me through it." Shane straightened. "Driver keeps hands visible at all times. We approach from an angle, not straight on. No bunching up. One man watches the driver, one clears the back. If it's a truck, we have 'em step out while we check the cargo." "Good," Laughlin said, then turned to Wilson. "What are your escalation steps if a driver refuses?" "Start with verbal commands," Wilson replied. "If they don't comply, escalate to show of force, weapon at the low ready. Still non-compliant, we pull 'em out, detain, search the vehicle fully." Laughlin nodded, satisfied. "You check under the damn thing too. Ain't just the trunk you gotta worry about. They'll strap explosives under the chassis if they're feeling creative. Rodriguez, how you gonna check for that?" Rodriguez didn't hesitate. "Mirror on a pole, go slow, look for wires or anything out of place. If it smells like fuel or anything chemical, back the fuck off and call it in." "Good," Laughlin said. "See, this is how you stay alive. You assume every car is carrying a bomb, but you don't go making a damn scene unless you got a reason." Davis folded his arms. "One more thing. Don't let 'em crowd you. Market gets busy. People'll try to get close. Could be nothing. Could be someone looking for a chance to grab a weapon. Keep 'em at arm's length." Laughlin turned to his men. "You heard him. Keep your heads up. We ain't playing mall cops here. This ain't a goddamn joke." Lauren exhaled. "Christ, Sarge, we get it. You're killing the vibe." Laughlin shot him a look. "Good. You keep that vibe killed, and maybe you won't get your dumb ass shot." Shane adjusted his gear, scanning the street beyond the makeshift command post. The town looked quiet enough, but the quiet places were the ones that got you killed. This wasn't home. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even